from the health industry. They've spent so far this year, in 9 months, $400,000 lobbying Congress on the health care bill alone. That's not to count other stuff. So the question is for citizens, what a person who lives on the south side of Chicago, what kind of access are you going to have in that environment? So what we want to do is really go back and tap into this rich history of activism, of movement building. Let's go to Washington. I was on a radio recently, a black radio station, when a woman complained that I was attacking the president. I was not. I said, let's have a million strong march in Washington to march for health care and to march for jobs. She said, leave him alone. He just got there. He's doing the best he can. When we're marching in Washington, yeah, it's not about Barack Obama. It's actually to send a message and actually to give him cover. If he wants a good health care bill, he could say to insurance industry that's putting pressure on him and the health industry, I've got 1 million people on Washington Mall who want health care. I don't have any choice. I have to sign this legislation. So it's really about it's our right to do this. It's not an attack on the president, but I'm afraid that if we don't start marching on the streets and if we don't start claiming our rights, we're going to lose these important debates on health care and workers' rights and so forth.
Hi, my name is Chaz Bowen from Gann Academy. My question for you is, what would you say to a young person about the financial sacrifices one must make in choosing a career as a community organizer?
If financial, you can become president. Oh, come on, it pays off. Well, I can tell you that many organizations today have become pretty good at fundraising from foundations and grassroots fundraising, and so it's not. When I started out, we were not, I mean, there's a series of missed paychecks, and it was really a job of the poor. But I think many organizations who do this kind of stuff have become quite astute at raising money, and Ohio Citizen Action does quite well. And so the salaries are quite competitive because these organizations also know that if you're going to do this kind of work, you're going to need disciplined people, you're going to need good workers, and you're going to need smart people, and they're going to want to get paid. So I wouldn't worry about making a living. The great thing about the United States is that from an infrastructure perspective, this economy can sustain full-time activism, people being paid to do social justice. So don't worry about it, my friend.
You're talking a lot about transformation, so I'm wondering, as someone who's now working to unionize teachers at charter schools, how you respond to this sort of the dominant perspective that unions tend to be obstacles to school improvement and school transformation. So how are unions involved in productive ways in that struggle?
Right. Well, historically, there's a public narrative out there that has been promoted by, I think, some people who might have had a vested interest in privatizing education. And the public narrative goes, unions protect bad teachers, protect incompetent teachers. They stifle creativity and innovation. And what has happened, though, is that the charter schools themselves, if you look at recent data, are not demonstrably better than public schools. Because it's a very complex picture. I mean, I can take you to neighborhoods in Chicago where kids, because of communal instability, a child whose friend just got shot last night who has to go to school the next day is not a candidate for good learning, is not a candidate for being a good student. There's a lot of trauma in some of these neighborhoods. There's chronic unemployment in some of these neighborhoods. Somebody talked about people getting 2-3 jobs. With families who are working 2 or 3 jobs who, even if they want to, are not as involved in the lives of their children. So there's been a failure to appreciate the complexity and to have a really broad, comprehensive approach. Some of us have been pushing ideas like a living wage law to say that we need a living wage law in Chicago. We were pushing it for industries, big box stores like Walmart and Home Depot and so forth that are making incredible amounts of money from these neighborhoods to say you got to pay a living wage. It's not just a social justice, a question of economic justice for the worker. It really is about creating stability in these neighborhoods. When those parents are working 2 or 3 jobs, they're spending less and less time with the kids. Those are the kids we read about in the news as casualties of street violence, and they're not learning in school. And so raising wages ought to be part and parcel of the discourse around education so that parents can be freed to invest the kind of time that they need. Every educator agrees that parental involvement is necessary, it is important for children's education. But the same elites who are lecturing to us about the importance of education and they want to privatize so they can show us how to do it better, have really not, in Chicago, I mean, you can look at the list of companies who oppose the living wage ordinance are the same companies that are promoting the privatization of education. So on the one hand, they don't really care about raising wages. On the other hand, they preach to us about good education. So those are some of the contradictions we face out there. Your public school teacher is facing more than just a challenge of standing up and teaching kids. They are literally a speech therapist, they're physical therapist, they're social worker, there are a lot of things. They're dealing with a lot of baggage that kids bring to the school. So unless we start dealing with this question of social instability, communal instability, I'm afraid that just creating a new school, a charter school, while the conditions remain the same in the community, is not a panacea. And I think the data is bearing that out. So I think we just need to be more sophisticated. We need to understand teachers need they need support. I mean, before we pull a trigger, this idea that you can just fire people, you're underperforming, let's fire. You know, we've got to start asking some questions. How much support are those teachers getting? How much professional development are they getting? So let's be understanding of the enormous challenges that teachers are facing in the school system.
Hello, my name is Brian Holloway. I go to Lincoln West High School. I am myself a Christian, and I was blessed to be the president of the Army of God Ministries, the team-based ministry. And my question for you is, you said you support homosexual rights. Okay, you know, they have the right to, you know, to marry one another because that's what they choose. That's their personal opinion, their views.
Yes.
Now, my question for you is, okay, as a Christian, and, you know, I have, you know, as an American citizen also, I have rights. And if I believe that it is an insult to my faith because it's in my, you know, in the Holy Bible, that homosexuals, you know, should not get married. The homosexuals should not have, they should have rights. Yes, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But as far as marriage goes, in a Christian church, a Christian church, do you think that they should have the right to intrude on my rights? To basically, it's an insult to my faith that they get married within the confines of a holy Christian church, because in my personal view, it's a disgrace, it's a mockery. Right. So would you say that it is okay for them to get married?
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I explain this? Okay.
Right. And I appreciate the question. I appreciate your devotion to your faith. But I think that what makes this country great, you know, is that people have a right to have differences of opinion, to think differently about an issue. There are a lot of Christians, by the way, who actually can give you biblical justification for why it's okay for somebody to be homosexual. There are people who are concerned about sort of and I'm not an expert on Christianity, but there seems to be a kind of selective enforcement of Christian doctrine. If the idea is to enforce biblical code, the Bible says I can pick up sections of the Bible that says you shouldn't be eating meat. I don't see a crusade against meat eating. I mean, so it's a very complex picture. But in a democracy, you ought to allow that your faith disallows homosexuality, but you don't have a right to go and say to your neighbor that you can't do this or you can't do that. You can't be. Your family is not being hurt by the couple across the street that is getting married because they're gay. The divorce rates in this country have astronomical. They have nothing to do with gay people. If that's the case, you know, I mean, I have a novel idea. How about legislation to ban divorce, let's protect marriage by banning divorce, making it illegal to divorce.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland Forum, we have been listening to James Thindwa, organizer with Chicago Alliance of Charter Teachers and Staff. Thank you, Mr. Thindwa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.